大家好，我是康云. Hello everyone, I'm Kang Yun, aka Cricket, aka Cloud, and welcome to some Demon Souls PvP. So this is going to be another post-commentary video compilation of my invasions with Chang'e, part of the Chang'e's Journey Through Boletaria walkthrough. And just as in the co-op video, PvP is just as much a part of this game as is co-op, so I thought it very much appropriate to show a handful of my invasions I had. And as you see here, we're starting out in the Valley of Defilement. Now my character, as you know, does not have that much HP, especially as of the recording of these invasions, but it's more so, or I guess that's less important because my magic is quite strong, and I'm either going to die quickly or the opponent is going to die quickly. And as you see here, I died pretty easily. This guy had a katana. I opted to switch to my moon-winged spear rather than use some more magic. I tried to mix it up, but clearly my most powerful attacks are my magic. So I guess it's been a little bit since I've recorded the last video. Well, recorded the commentary and uploaded the co-op video. I've been pretty busy as of late, so I hadn't gotten around to doing this, and I've wanted to do it on a day when I wasn't feeling. Because by the time I had time to record the commentary, it was pretty late, and I was pretty tired, and I've been going to bed earlier these days and getting up earlier. So today it works out that I'm able to do this. It was my father's 60th birthday over the weekend, so we had a good celebratory time. And today is Sunday. It is February the 21st. And yeah, it's actually afternoon. I don't know if I've recorded. I haven't recorded in the afternoon in a while. It's usually been in the evenings. But yeah, these are some invasions I'm doing, and as you see there, I was able to get a kill on that host. And I do want to talk about invasions, as this is a video composed of them. And more so, yeah, I see I'm checking my character tendency because I've just killed somebody, so I'm no longer at pure white. There's been a long debate in the community, and this started pretty much probably with Demon Souls. People try to, and they still do, divide. I'm repairing my weapon because I noticed its low durability. They separate PvP into two categories, really. There's invasions, and there's duels, or organized fight clubs. And it's generally considered to be that when you're invading, you expect, or you should not expect the host to not heal, and you should, if you're the host, you should expect the invader to heal. You shouldn't assume anything during invasions. People have debated this back and forth. I tend to lie in the camp of if you're being invaded, you're forcing yourself into a player's game. You're unwanted. It's totally within reason that the host does everything they can to survive and to kill you. And the invader will do the same to take down their opponent. Now, of course, there's players who take exception to those standards, which is it's very much a player by player basis. You see here when I'm invading, often these players don't right away see me because of that lag that I mentioned, where when you spawn into a player's game, you can't actually see them for a few seconds. So that's why you see some of the hosts have a delayed reaction to me. I'm trying not to take too much advantage of that, though I think I do at times. There I was able to take out the blue phantom, but the host cut me down with some quick attacks. I wasn't able to retaliate fast enough. This build, while actually is originally designed for PvP, I had planned this build to be level 125 or 120-ish range, but based on the current online actions, that like you get a wider range of invasions in different areas around the levels of 50 to 80 in the remake. So that's why I decided to cap this build, at least for the time being, at level 80. And then at one point or another, I'll take her up to 125 to make a proper PvP build. And then I guess that ties into when I'm talking about invasions versus duels, because a duel is, and this was introduced in Demon's Souls, there are two ways to do PvP in this game. There's the Black Eye Stone, which is what I'm using here, and you get the Black Eye Stone from any Black Phantom that you kill. The first Black Phantom NPC that you kill will drop the Black Eye Stone, which allows you to invade other players' worlds. And the level ranges differ for invasions than they do for co-op. I don't believe in the original Demon's Souls, and I think they changed it slightly in the remake. In the original Demon's Souls, you couldn't invade players that were below your level. Whereas in Dark Souls and onward, they made it so it's more like within the co-op range, where it's like plus and minus up like 10% of your level or something like that. But yeah, so the Black Eye Stone is the invasion tool, and the Red Eye Stone is something you get at the end of the game. If you get, there are two endings. One of them will get you the Red Eye Stone, which functions like the Blue Eye Stone, but instead of being summoned as a blue phantom, you're summoned as a red, and you're hostile to the host. And it's used for organized PvP, or basically, because in this case, a player is intentionally summoning you into their world with the intention to fight you. So in those cases, it's not a written rule, but it is often assumed that when you get summoned as a red, you're not going to heal, and the host is not going to heal. Now, like again, just like invasions, there are exceptions. And when I was younger, I was quite a bit more, shall we say, picky or sensitive to this, where when I was summoned, I assumed the host wasn't going to heal. And when they did heal, I would get upset and maybe sometimes message them and say, why did you heal? Like, you know, if you hadn't healed, I could have killed you 3 times over or whatever. But at the end of the day, and as I've grown older and the more I played this game, is you can't expect everybody to play by those rules. And the more players that play these games, the more you'll encounter players who are not going to play by the same rules. It's one thing to be in an organized fight club that you organize online on Discord or something, and everybody has a build that's in a certain level range and agrees to not use certain tactics or not heal or such. But if you're being summoned by random players, there is the chance that you could be summoned by somebody who will heal and maybe even be ganking, because ganking is another thing that existed since the original Demon Souls, and it exists in other games, I'm sure. Ganking is gang killing, if you for whatever reason are unfamiliar with that term, and it refers to players who are waiting for invaders or summoning players, and they have 1 or 2 other phantoms with them waiting to kill you as soon as you spawn in. And honestly, fighting multiple players at once was very it's a very challenging yet rewarding feeling to be able to overcome, and that's part of what makes me want to continue, or made me want to continue playing PvP. Or once I had already beaten the game, I would just invade, and more so in Dark Souls. But I would do it in Demon Souls as well. And I talked about this in my co-op video, but I got to the point where I played these games, at least Dark Souls anyways, more or less solely for the PvP, and would just make builds because I wanted to do PvP with them, and that's basically all, the majority of what I did in these games. Yeah, you see here I'm dying to turn this world to pure black, as I was doing when the other worlds, which again touches on the comment I made in the co-op video about using invasions or co-op as a means to get your body back and manipulate world tendencies. So same deal here, and this is basically just the other end of the spectrum. But yeah, I would just make builds to do PvP, and I think after a while, it's not that, I mean, yeah, you get worn out of it, but you begin to understand how the PvP works, because the PvP in these games has quite a few exploitable mechanics, as do any online games. And the larger the player base, the more familiar players will become with the tactics, and then you'll encounter players who are just, you're always going to find somebody who is of a higher skill level than you. So you just be aware of that. And while I used to be a lot more competitive in my PvP, especially when I was younger, and particularly when I was doing it on Dark Souls 2, and to somewhat of an extent in Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. I never was extremely serious about it, and I also never really made the stereotypical cookie cutter meta builds per se. Here's an easy monk summon. Host dies immediately. That's a quick way to get your body back if you get summoned by the monk, and if you don't want to lose tendency, because that doesn't affect your tendency, your character tendency, that is. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, I never wanted to make builds that were only going to use the most exploitable or most powerful stuff. I remember PvPing with a guy that I met online in Dark Souls, and he PvP'd a ton. And I remember his build was just the Mother's Mask build. And it was a Vitality Gouge build, and all he used was, like, I think, a Chaos Claymore and Chaos Rapier and maybe a few other weapons. But he really only had enough stats to wield a few weapons, which he made either Lightning or Chaos. And just had a ton of Vitality, and that's all he really ever played on. And I remember asking him, like, I was like, we would fight and he would always use the same weapons, and I was like, do you want to use a different weapon? Let's fight with different weapons, because that's what I like doing, is like making builds and then using different weapons. I liked using stuff that wasn't always the most powerful. Like, I remember doing PvP as a cosplaying as a hollow soldier, where I just used a broken sword and shield and the hollow warrior armor, and it was just, I might have killed 1 or 2 players using that sort of setup. And it was more for fun than anything, but my point is I never took the PvP so seriously where I had to win every time. I might fight a player 10 times, and if I could beat them once, I would feel satisfied. And I would try to use things that were not so overused. I mean, there were times where, yeah, I would use weapons. If I liked using a weapon, I would use it despite it, even if it was maybe a more meta or like top tier weapon. And it really depends on what you were doing. But in general, I preferred to stick to what I enjoyed using, because I think in these games, really, especially in Demon Souls, most of all the weapons are useful in some way, because you can use them down, you can make them you can upgrade them with the stones that benefit your stats the most. And yeah, there are weapons that have like the highest damage, like they're like the strongest of any class, but that doesn't make the other weapons like worthless or useless. But you see often people will post the question like, what's the best weapon in the game, or what's the best weapon of what class in this? And here's a quit out, and that's something I'll get to in a moment, the quit outs, because that's a big ball of mess that we can talk about. But yeah, I remember using the mace a lot, or like, I don't know, weapons that you just wouldn't see a ton of in Dark Souls, and just having fun. At the end of the day, I think it was a challenge for myself, because maybe I wasn't using the most overpowered gear, and I felt like maybe in a way thought like if I was more skilled, I could win with any weapon, which I think is true. But it is true that there are some weapons and some tactics and ways of playing that are just that much more, that much more exploitable, and it can be quite difficult. And here's another quit out. It can be quite difficult to fight against players who use such tactics, especially players like in Dark Souls. The backstab mechanic was so broken, tied in with the poise mechanic. You could exploit that to no other, and a lot of players would exploit both the poise and the backstabs in Dark Souls. Backstabs are not as bad in Demon Souls, though they do still exist, and they are exploitable. But I think they are the worst and most broken in the first Dark Souls, especially due to the poise mechanic in that game. And we have another disconnect. So I think it's time to talk about that, guys. Disconnects, and this is something you see a lot on the Reddit. You see people defending it one way or the other. Disconnecting was always a thing in these games, but I don't know if I've seen as many disconnects ever before in doing online invasions in a Souls game as I have in the Demon Souls remake. In the original game, I think all of them but Bloodborne. In all of the games, if you were online and you had another player in your game, the game would gray out the option to quit out the game. So the game wouldn't allow you to. You could in Bloodborne. But Bloodborne was a much more single player or co-op friendly game than were the Souls games. But in the remake, you see they have not disallowed players from doing that. And it's not that players wouldn't disconnect anyways, because all you had to do on the other games is you would quit to the main menu and then force quit the game. And well, you were not supposed to do that, and the game didn't like it, and you'd get a warning. And it wasn't until Dark Souls 2 that you were able to, or that there was a punishment for quitting out the game consecutive times during online play. And what would happen is you would get a soft ban, and it would just basically put you in a player pool with a bunch of cheaters that were either, they got caught cheating, or I'm not positive of this because it's never happened to me, but I've just read. And I think the other thing would be is you would be put you would just not be able to play online at all, I believe. If you know about that more than I do, let me know in the comments. But I believe that was the penalty for doing that. And I believe it was in Dark Souls 2, 3, and Dark Souls Remastered. The original Dark Souls did not have that. And of course, the original Demon Souls did not either. Bloodborne doesn't have that. But you can quit out the game from the menu while you are playing with another player in your game. You can just quit the game. And with how fast the PS5 can load, players more than ever before take advantage of that. And you see here, this player decided, oh, I don't want to get invaded. I can just quit out the game because it'll load back in so fast. It's not a big deal, and the game lets you do it. So this is an extremely frustrating thing because there's no punishment for it. There's nothing to dissuade players from doing it. On top of that, there exists a bug where if a player quits out the game at the wrong time, the invader, you more or less get stuck in that player's game, and if you're not wary to this or aware of this, you can actually interact with the Archstone and then warp back to the Nexus, and then suddenly you'll have all of that player, the player who you invaded, you have their progress, and it overwrites what you had. And if they had beaten a boss, because you can, in the remake, you can beat bosses and turn on the password, and if you're human, you can still get invaded. And why this is so game breaking is what will happen is you go back into the Nexus, but you have their progress, but it's as if you've killed the boss in the world that you invaded. Like say you invade, for example, you're invading in Shrine of Storms in the first part. And the player there was waiting for invaders. They had their password on. The boss was dead, but they, for whatever reason, quit out the game. And you're stuck in their world, and you don't realize it, and you touch the Archstone and warp back, and suddenly you have their progress, but it's as if you've beaten the Adjudicator, but you don't have the Adjudicator's soul, or it basically locks you out from progressing in the game, because suddenly you can't beat the game fully because you can't beat the Adjudicator, so you can't, you don't trigger the cutscene for having beaten all the bosses. And another thing I don't like, while we're on this, is in the original game, you could attack the enemies and kill them. And which was fun. But beyond that, it would allow you to get past them. In Dark Souls, if you run up against an enemy a long enough time, you'll just go through the enemy. Whereas in the remake, and I think in Dark Souls 2, they made it so you couldn't go past enemies, and it would block you out from certain areas if the enemy was blocking your way. But yeah, that is a game-breaking glitch that has to do with quitting out when a player invades you. Here we have another mage. And we got each other. Those are always fun. So yeah, I am in the camp of those who think it is not appropriate to quit out during an invasion. And the arguments are very often stated, and I think very straightforward. The game gives you two options to avoid invasions. The first option is to play offline. It asks you, you can go offline in the beginning, when you start up the game. The second option is to play in soul form, which is optimal to do so in many cases, as this walkthrough has shown. You can have an attack boost when you are in soul form, if you have white tendency. And it allows you to be able to die without worrying that you'll mess up your world tendency. And I think therein, the world tendency aspect is part of why players choose to quit out the game so often, because they realize if they die in human form, their world tendency will go towards black, and they don't want that. But there's ways to get it away from black. Went for a parry there and missed it. You see that sword a lot, the Northern Regalia. It's a very popular sword. It's very powerful. But yeah, because that you can play offline, or you can play in soul form, you can avoid invasions altogether. And this is not a new game, or I guess Souls games aren't new, and the idea of invasions being in these games is not new. So it's beyond me why players go. I guess it's not beyond me here. Hear me out. It frustrates me, I'll say, the fact that players knowingly play online, play in body form. They know they can get invaded, yet they'll quit out over and over. And I've had some sessions, not in this, not with this character, but I've had sessions on another character I've been playing on, where I had more players quit out the game in a night of invasions than I had actual invasions. It became so tiring to just invade, and it was a lot of the times I would invade the same player, and I think I invaded the same player almost 15 times, and he quit out almost every single time. He had a phantom with him, and they were trying to get through the level, and it was like he'd quit out, I'd invade him again, and then he'd quit out, and I'd invade him again. He'd quit out, and then it's like, well, there was one time where I think there's 1 or 2 times he actually fought me, and I killed his phantom, and then he immediately quit out. And it was just like, why do you keep quitting out? You're clearly, the game wants, like we're linked up, so there's, I don't know. And he was summoning a phantom, which I thought was bizarre. It's like, you want to play online with a phantom, but you don't want invaders. So you're just going to quit the game continuously. Now, I don't think that falls under the conduct of abuse, because the player's not technically doing anything abusive, so that they're not it doesn't warrant them being reported. But I still think there should be some sort of something there to dissuade players from doing so. And I think having a soft ban was a good way to do that in the other games, because if not for that, players would just do that willy-nilly. And that ban wasn't even that harsh. Like, you had to do it, like, I think between 5 or 10 times within, oh, there he goes, 5 or 10 times in the span, like a certain amount of time, and the game would, say like, hey, you can't play online or whatever. I don't know. This never happened to me, because, I have quit out, and I'll get to this in a second here, but I think they should have implemented something to dissuade players from doing this, because it's very frustrating when you're playing the game, because invasions are part of the game, and I know people don't like them. Some people don't like them, and like I said, you can play offline or play in soul form. If you want to enjoy co-op, well, then that's what you have a cooperative partner to help you for. And this gets to where, yes, I can understand why some players will quit out the game in some scenarios. And you've seen this a lot on the Reddit, where new players get into Demon Souls Remake. They're all excited. They got their new build. They got their deluxe limited edition armor, whatever it is, the Red-Eyed Knight gear, and they're all excited. And they beat the Phalanx, and they're ready to go take on the Tower Knight, and they go through, or maybe they go to Stonefang, and then they get invaded, and suddenly, without realizing it, there's a yellow mist surrounding them, and all of their gear is broken, and they don't understand why. And there's a red phantom, and they poison them, they plague them, they bleed them, they have a scraping spear, they break their gear, they use soul suck, they drain their levels. You know, there's a lot of things that From Software has given players to use as, you know, troll things in this game. It's by design that that they include this stuff. It's not like it's, you know, I think that's just the FromSoft being deviant, because they are. Don't fool yourself. From Software, the way that they design these games, they're very devious. There's lots of things that they throw at the players that is, one would think is a little bit harsh or something, you know. But there's counters to it. They're not always reliable, but at the end of the day, it's part of the game. But these troll builds exist, and the fact that you can invade a player with fully upgraded gear and never level up. You can invade players who are new and have basically unupgraded stuff, and you can just take them out in 1 or 2 hits. And that's been a thing since the original Dark Souls. It's been a thing since Demon Souls and Dark Souls. The fact that people would do low-level invasion troll builds. I've done it myself. It can be fun. And it gets old after a while, but I find there's ways in which you can make a low-level build more challenging by not using fully upgraded stuff. They tried to limit it with the soul memory thing in Dark Souls 2. But getting back to quitting out, players who encounter this assume that that's all that invasions are going to be, is troll builds that are just going to one-shot them or break all their gear or just, you know, do everything they can to make life difficult for the player. And that is not the case. More so at low level, yes, it's a lot more common, but I've experienced invasions that were not like that plenty of times. And especially when you get into higher levels, or as you level up, you get more, you have more range of players that or that have more, you know, different builds. That's not to say that you will encounter a lot of very similar setups, because there's setups that are just very popular. And here this guy is fleeing to go get his phantom again. That happens a lot, where you beat the phantom and then the host runs back to safety, which is, it makes sense, and I've done it myself, because especially if I'm in a situation where I don't want to die. And I don't mean to say this about players that do these sort of tactics. It's because I understand they're trying to survive, especially if they're not well equipped or adept at using doing PvP. And he's basically turtling here, and I get hit by the invisible phantom because he didn't, as I said, there's a delay before when the phantoms show up. So that's why it looked like I was getting attacked by nothing. But the blue phantom, he was there in his game. He saw me, but he didn't spawn on my screen yet. And that's the same thing for red invaders, which I think is a really poorly implemented thing. And I'm showing it here in this video because I think they should fix it if it's something they can fix. It seems like, I don't know if it's a loading issue, but yeah, I'm getting off track here. I understand why players will quit out the game in situations like that, where they want to avoid things like that, and if they assume that all invasions are like that. But not all invasions are like that. And it wasn't like when I was invading, I was using dirty tactics or anything. I was just using a character that had in fact, I had a club. The club is a really weak weapon. The player probably could have killed me if they knew what they were doing. And that's the thing. If they don't know what they're doing, you know, but even if they didn't know what they're doing, they could at least give it a fighting chance. I don't know. I, so I tend to feel like rather than just quit out because you're afraid, tough it out. It's just a game. If you die, it's not the end of the world. You can get your tendency back. And if you're fighting somebody who's way stronger than you, so be it. And that sort of, yeah, that sucks. But it's not the end of the world, in other words. And so my advice to players who are new, if you're watching this for help, for, you know, as a walkthrough or guide, as it's intended, my suggestion is, if you're when it comes to online play, don't quit out the game. I understand there's situations where maybe you have to, because you have to leave or you have to log off, which I've done so in those cases before too, where the invader just runs away and refuses to fight you straight up. And you don't feel like chasing them through the level. So yeah, there's definitely situations where I think quitting out is less of a big deal, but the fact that it happens so much in the remake, just this is the reason why I bring this up, you know. I think if we as a community could come to more of an agreement that you know, PvP is part of the game, and while not every fight you have is going to be great, it's not the end of the world, like I said. So I'm not having too much success here. You do see a lot of the Crescent Falchion, the Northern Regalia, the Claymore. You see a lot of magic builds, a lot of Dragon Bone Smashers. I haven't seen too many Dragon Bone Smashers. I don't think we saw any on this build, on this video, but yeah. I just hope that if anybody who's watching this, or who watches this in the future at any point, you know, if there's any message I could give, it's that invasions are just part of the game, and they're, for better or worse, embrace them, have fun with them. Don't take them so seriously. If you die, or, you know, who knows? You may have been able to beat the player that invaded you. Now, I don't know if this guy was about to have a fight with the red. I think I attacked him before I even saw the red, and I was like, well, we'll just go with it here. This is, yeah, you see a lot of katanas as well. And there, that I was pretty satisfied with that parry, because I knew it was coming, because it's the katana users very often will spam, thinking that they're too fast. So, and I quick swapped to my buckler, and I was able to get around in time. Now, I experimented here, I think, at some point, where, as you noticed, I've just been invading, and you spawn. If you invade from the Archstone, you always spawn in the same spot, and the way that invasions work in Demon Souls is that each level is sectioned off by there are fog walls that you cross through, not boss fog walls, but just fog walls that section off the level. And if you are in the area before the first fog wall, that's the first section of the level. And so when you invade, you'll invade any player who is within that first section. And then if you want to invade a player that's in the second section, you have to go past where the fog wall was. And I think there's 2 sections in Boletaria. 1-1, that is. And, I'm not certain if it's this one, but I do know that there is an invasion. I do get an invasion in the second section. I guess another thing is I should talk about like spots to invade. This Boletaria 1-1 seems to be a pretty popular spot at around between levels 40 and 80. It just seems pretty popular all around because it's a big wide open area. The enemies are not that tough. And it's easy to clear them out. Yeah, I come in here because this is the second gate by these hoplites. And I use my stone here to invade in the other section because I wanted to try. Because it's most players assume that if they're going to get invaded, it's going to be in the first half of the level, but you don't see too many invasions. And in fact, pretty much most of the levels in the game, most players will just spawn at the Archstone and then just invade there. Another way to do it would be to warp to the second Archstone and walk backwards, depending on how the level is laid out. But in this case, you have to go over to the section, and then you spawn over here near these boulders by the dragon nest. And we can hear the dragon, so we know he's over there. And I'm casting Cloak. Although the bright red outline, I think, doesn't do much to help that. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is the last invasion, guys. So, there it is. Got him. I hope I was able to clearly express my thoughts and I made sense, but overall, PvP is a lot of fun, and I think if you want to enjoy PvP in this game, by all means, go right ahead and do it. And don't be afraid of getting invaded. It's something that happens. So with that, I'll take my leave, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Subscribe if you have not already. And I'll see all of you next time on Chang'e's Journey Through Boletaria. Umbasa.